Testing, testing. Can you hear that, Patrick? No, next weekend. Okay. Try it and see if it picks up your voice.
Testing.
Yeah.
Is it testing? Okay, great.
Are we ready?
Right.
Are you ready, Patrick? Ready? Welcome to another virtual author event at the Poison Pen Bookstore. I'm John Charles, and I'm going to borrow a British expression and say we are chuffed to have with us one of our favorite authors, Hannah Dennison, whose new book is just out, Dagger of Death at Honeychurch Hall. Before we begin, I'd like to let those tuning in know the Poison Pen does have signed copies, a limited number of this book, so if you'd like one, give us a call or go online to the Poison Pen Bookstore. Now I'd like to welcome Hannah Dennison.
Oh, thank you very much. This is my favorite store, as you know, so I'm very excited to be back here. Has been a while.
It has been, but we're glad you're back. For those few people that might not know who you are, there's just a small number. Can you tell us a little bit about who Hannah was before you started writing? Because your own career is almost as colorful as a novel.
Yes, that's very true, actually. My poor dad used to despair of me ever settling down or anything. So let me think. I was in the Navy for 6 weeks. As an officer, actually, and that you had to go through rigorous sort of interviews to make sure that you weren't that you were officer material. But I just hated it, so I didn't like the uniform or anything. That was mainly that, actually. Plus, you didn't go to sea, and I wanted to travel. So then I became a flight attendant, and then I've also been working on a newspaper as a obituary writer, which was one of my series was based on that. All set in England. Let me think. And then I've done antique dealing, and I went to America and became worked in Hollywood for a while, and then I still work for actually an advertising agency. So I've been around a bit, actually. And in March I get my Rolex watch because I've been there for 25 years.
Wow!
I know, isn't that terrifying?
Yeah.
It's yeah, I know. I know. My mum said, she said, can she borrow it so she can pretend that it's hers at the nursing home, you know. Anyway.
Well, so when did you decide you wanted to write a book?
I think it was when I worked in movies doing screenplays and specs, and nothing ever happened, and it was very soul destroying. So about, I think it was 2008, I got my first book published, but it was more because I didn't have any control over anything in the screenwriting business. They just take your work away and rewrite it. And it was just more of a experiment to start with because it's such a different medium than writing screenplays. But I guess I've always wanted to be a writer, but we're always asked that question, and I always thought I just wanted to be a flight attendant. But apparently my sister says, no, you always wanted to write, so...
And yet your career as a flight attendant, there was a pivotal moment that kind of pushed you into writing.
Oh, there was, actually. Yeah. Yes, there was. So, of course, I have to do some name dropping here. I can't. I apologize because my name dropping days are very few and far between now, so I'm going to really push this one. So I was working on the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade flights. We were on location, and so I got to know Steven Spielberg really well. And because the planes were very small, they're only like 8 seats, and then we had all the celebrities on board. And I think it was during one of those flights when Steven Spielberg said to me, is this what you really want to do? I must have been up to my eyeballs in, like, I don't know, rubbish or something. Yeah. And I have mentioned about the writing and all that. And he sort of said, if you remember in the film, there's this moment where Indy takes this leap of faith and he steps off that cliff and the bridge appears, and he said that's what you need to do. You need to take that jump and move to America. So I did. And so I was there for 25 years. Yeah. So it worked.
Yeah, your first series was the Vicky Hill series. Is that correct?
Vicky Hill, which was roughly about my experience as a obituary writer. So I was only like, let me think. I think I was like 20 at the time, 19, 20. And the funny thing about that is that it was based on my life in Tiverton. The Tiverton Gazette was the newspaper I worked on. And I wrote all the obituaries and that. And then fast forward, I don't know, 20 years, and I go to Tiverton Library, which still exists, for a panel, like an author talk. And I mentioned that I'd actually worked on the Tiverton Gazette. And they said, oh, we have all the archives in the basement here, including all the obituaries that you wrote. So I thought that was really strange, because that was way back in 1977. So, yeah.
And now it comes to your current book, which is part of the Honeychurch Hall series. How did that originate?
So the one that's just come out, The Dagger of Death, I've been dying to write about my mum actually for a while. Not that there's a connection with a dagger, by the way, but she was evacuated when war broke out in 1939, and she was evacuated to the countryside. And her experiences as an evacuee some were really good when she lived in a country house with staff, and then other times she was sent to live with one of the servants, who was quite cruel to her actually, and her name was Olive. So Olive is in that book. So I've got my home back on that. So I've been dying to somehow weave it into one of my stories, and so in Dagger of Death, there is this sort of connection to the past, which in England, since we're so steeped in history, and especially some of the older villages and towns where the same families have been around forever, and so there's always these dark secrets that seem to emerge. So that was where that came from. Plus, there's a new vicar in town in Dagger of Death. And I know that other writers probably do the same. They get inspired by little tiny things. And I went to my nephew's christening for his little boy, my great nephew, I suppose. And there was this very vibrant vicar there that I sort of thought, wow, this is so different than the ones I remember, who were quite austere. And he did have this very, very long hair that he wore swept up in a man bun. And he rode this Harley Davidson bike. And he was, even though he was like, maybe in his late 60s, he was actually quite hot. So I thought, I'm going to put him in a book too. So, yeah.
And if wrong, correct me, but isn't there also another World War II connection to the book in terms of D-Day? Oh,
yes, there is. And that's actually something that is coming more to the fore now with Operation Tiger, which was in Slapton Sands. So if people who've been to the West Country, there's this stretch of, I can't remember how long it is, maybe 3 miles or something, where the Americans came to practice for D-Day, before D-Day, but it was a disaster because there were a German U-boat actually came by, and they were all sitting ducks as they were practicing, and then there was live ammunition was exchanged, and it was a huge secret for years and years about what really happened that day. So I have connected that because my characters, where the book's set, it is close to Slapton Sands. And they still have a Sherman tank actually on the beach there, which was recovered from the sea in the 1980s. Yeah.
Let's take a step back to the book before Killer Christmas.
Yes.
Because I have to ask you, was it just serendipity, or are you just that brilliant that you decided to do Barbie in this book?
I have to say it was my sheer brilliance that did that. No, because I proposed that book 2 years before Barbie came out. So I almost want to put a sticker on it saying I was here first. So really that worked out really well actually, having Barbie as the sort of feature of the antique, because I always feature an antique in every book, even if it's something small. But in fact, if any of you have your original Barbie dolls at home in their original boxes, they're worth around $27,000. I have Cindy, which is the English equivalent, and she's about, I don't know, $9 on eBay. So if you should keep your Barbie dolls. But I saw this I think it was an article that was published in Denver or Dallas or something about this woman whose entire Barbie collection had been stolen. Someone had come in and stolen all their vintage Barbie dolls and everything. And I thought, oh, that sounds an interesting idea. So I did a bit of research on Barbie, and the most expensive Barbie doll, and I had to write this down just in case I've steered it so I could answer this question and sound important. But it's the Stefano Canturi Barbie, who has a 1 carat diamond necklace, and she is worth $305,000. Wow. So yeah, so Barbie's the thing. Barbie's the thing.
Yeah. The series Honeychurch Hall does center around antiques in a way, and you had some career experience with that. How does that help you as an author? Do you know what to look for? Do you know sources?
I do actually. I mean, I worked for this French antique dealer back in the 80s, and I do have a fascination for antiques. I'm not terribly good at it. I have to sort of really do a lot of research. And when I was working in the shop, in the Pantiles in Tunbridge Wells, if anyone's been to Tunbridge Wells, if ever I was asked, I was always saying, oh, it's just very, very rare. That was my standard reply. But it does actually, when it comes into a book, it's always good to have, it sort of adds an extra layer. And my neighbor in where I live now, she actually works for an auction house, so I'm able to access some of the lingo that I perhaps wouldn't have remembered because it was such a long time ago.
Have things changed since then, between when you were working and now when you write the books?
Yeah, very much so. It's not. I think also with all the exposure, like Antiques Roadshow, everybody's got something in their attic. Whereas when I worked there, they really finding those kinds of bargains was you see them all the time, and then you mark them up by 400% or something. So I suppose in that way, it's very rare if you do find something spectacular. It just doesn't happen anymore, really.
Most of your books are marketed as cozy mysteries. Yes. How would you define cozy? What do you think are required key ingredients for a good cozy?
I think it's the community wherever it's set, and there are so many different cozy parameters now. I think it's always whether it's in a village or in any small community, or in my case, I've created this village that's getting bigger and bigger with every book now. So there's no violence or graphic sex, no bad language. I think one of my earlier books, before I really realized that I was a cozy writer, was I think I'd written bollocks or something as a swear word, and I got told off, and they said, no, you can't write that. So I thought, oh, okay, bother then. Let me think. The murder is it's always like domestic, and usually the killer, it's not like some serial killer comes in and wreaks havoc. It's always someone known to the killer, most of the time anyhow. And then you have other sort of spin-offs with, cooking cozies and all those kinds of things. I guess my antiques
set in Scottish bookstores.
Yeah, exactly.
Cupcake bakeries.
Bakeries. I know. I do love the cozy world. It's good. It's a feel-good book, which is what's important, I think.
Well, what I like about your books is people have this illusion that cozies are all, it's sweet and nothing bad happens, but there's this undercurrent of menace.
Oh, definitely.
And I'm thinking of there's some kind, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's something wild wort, something like a field of innocuous plant that's actually very deadly.
Oh.
Didn't that play some role?
Oh yeah, there is. Okay. Actually, I've forgotten about that one. See, I didn't even write that on my cheat sheet, actually. That's another great advantage of having my neighbor, because her daughter is a forager, so she forages, and so she gave me a whole load of poisonous plants that I can put into my books. And one of them is I always get it round the wrong way, water drop hemlock. Or is it hemlock drop water? I don't remember. Water drop hemlock. And it looks like cow parsley that you see in the hedgerows. It's absolutely everywhere in England. And if an animal would even have a leaf of it, it would just drop dead straight away. So, yeah, that was quite fun to do that, actually. Yeah, I quite like doing a bit of poisoning.
What is your process when it comes to writing the book? Because some writers, if you're writing a mystery, you have to plant clues. You need to kind of know who's going to be a suspect, who the victim is. But it turns out not necessarily. Some writers just hope it comes together.
Oh yeah, I think it's a horrible experience actually, and I hate every single minute of the first draft. So for like 3 months, I'm just really unhappy, and then because I sort of I'm not a pantser, so I don't like write by the seat of my pants, but I do have a vague idea of where everything's going, and then once that draft's finished, and then things start to come together. It's quite an amazing feeling of magic. And then I think, of course I knew that was going to happen. But then again, the next time I start, and it's the same process. And I know our wonderful friend Carolyn Hart, who we all remember so much, every book that she wrote, and I think she wrote 62, she says, is it 62? She said the same thing, that the first book, she's like, I can't do this. I can't make this work again. And then you do. But I usually start with a setting. That's what usually my sort of like the bowl that holds the story, wherever that might be. And generally, the victim or the villain is someone who's crossed my path recently, or a friend who said, can you get rid of X, Y, Z? And then I say, of course.
You've written a number of series. I think it's at least 3.
Yes, I have the Island Sisters mysteries too.
What are the challenges in writing a series for an author? Are there advantages? As a reader, I mean, how do you know you can pick up any book and be okay without having to read the previous ones? Talk about series.
Yes, that's I've got mixed feelings about that actually, because I do love going back to the same characters every time. I really enjoy that because they're my friends. They're my only friends normally. And I like having that familiarity of all the places and descriptions. And I've got this, Bible where I don't have to waste too much time if I want to try and remember a room in the Honeychurch Hall or something. I think the biggest challenge is in a series is that whole Jessica Fletcher, is it Cabot Cove?
Cabot Cove,
yeah, because I don't know how to get around that without doing a Game of Thrones, killing a favorite character off. And I haven't had the courage to do that yet. So it's almost like every time there's obviously a new book, there's new characters, and one of them is going to be either killed or the killer. So that's something I grapple with a lot, actually.
Do you always know a series is going to come to an end as an author, or sometimes is that choice taken away from you?
I think it's taken away. I mean, I know that Island Sisters unfortunately just came to a stop, and I had one more book in my head that I'd still quite like to do to wrap the series up. But I think also with Island Sisters, because it was on an island, I really did run out of possibilities, because it was a locked room really, and those are so difficult to write. That was probably the hardest book I had to write, actually. Yeah.
You've been writing now for a long time. You also teach writing, is that correct?
Yes, I teach mystery writing for UCLA, but online. Okay. So, which is great. It's one of the great things that has come out of this sort of new world that we live in.
What do you think are some of the most common mistakes that you're correcting aspiring writers on?
It's such a simple thing. It's just sit in the chair and finish the first draft. It doesn't matter if it's rubbish, but you can't work with a blank page. So, and I think so many writers, and I was the same when I started out, they want it to be perfect. So instead of just like putting a placeholder in and think, I'll come back to that, they go back and start all over again. And so you're never really getting into the flow of writing. So I think it's more that than anything to do with structure or anything like that, because that you can fix once you've got something down.
That's wise advice. Have you seen trends happen everywhere? Fashion, food.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
The automobile industry. What about mystery writing? As a writer, as a teacher, are you seeing things that you didn't expect? Are you seeing things come back again you never wanted to see?
Well, at the moment it's romantasy.
Yeah.
And so my British editor, she said that's all that I think it's a younger reader And she said, can you just put a dragon? Just put a dragon in there. And I'm thinking, I don't think I can. I wish I could, but I just don't think I can, actually. I don't know. So yeah, that has to be, that's the trend at the moment, because we have vampires for a very long time, I think. I don't know.
Do you see cozies getting darker, getting a little bit more gritty, a little bit more?
I don't actually.
Okay.
I think they're just different subgenres within the cozy genre, maybe.
Yeah, I do think in some ways they're expanding, because it used to be we're getting more diverse characters. We're getting
definitely.
more
Yes.
diverse. It's not just small towns anymore.
No.
And settings.
Yeah, it is like, as I say, it could be in London, but it's the community around Liverpool Street Station or something, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think one of your co-authors, if I'm correct, is it Emmeline Duncan?
Oh, it's not. Did she write the Dalrymple? No, not
No.
Carola Dunn. No.
I'm thinking the one that does the coffee shop series, or
Oh yes, but
or
I
the
can't
coffee
remember the name
cart, or I'm getting it all wrong. But that just shows that I think writers, you want readers, so in some ways you have to adapt a little bit to.
You do. I definitely feel that. But then sometimes I might get
Letters from people that don't want you.
well, they'll say, I'm not going to read. I think it was, I can't remember, I won't say who or where they came
No,
from, but
because
I've
we're
got their
online, so they could
information.
track you down.
But yeah, so to say that because I had, it just, I think she found it offensive. It was something I had said in passing. And so you have to still be very careful, I think, and respectful of your readers. But most of mine are the same. I don't
Corset.
know. Yeah, I think so.
So you didn't tell her not to get her knickers in a twist?
No, but she's in a book.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't hurt her too much though.
Okay.
It was quick.
What about Hannah as a reader? You write mysteries. Have you always read mysteries? Do you not read what you write?
I
Do you read
don't. I
other
know.
things?
Honestly, I've been thinking about this question because I've really missed the pleasure I used to have as a reader before I started writing. I find that's one thing that's made me quite sad, because I would read a lot of family sagas or thrillers across the board and be completely immersed. And now it's all I can do to concentrate to read a chapter. I've started rereading Agatha Christie and actually really enjoyed that. And I think it's because I must have read them when I was much younger. And as an older person, I'm seeing a completely different tone to her books that I hadn't seen before. I do like a book. Oh, that's right. I read. So I went on safari. Just have to say, I went on safari with my daughter, who was pregnant. But that's another story. I read is it Edward Rutherford? And he writes those giant books.
London and the one about Stonehenge.
I read New York, which was almost 1,000 pages, and I loved every single page. And I was also on holiday, so I was able to really unplug. But I read it, and I think I wish I could write like that. So, because it's just so different. So I am pretty diverse in my reading.
Is it because now, as a writer, you're looking at things from that viewpoint and dissecting how they're doing it on the page?
But I think subconsciously, or else I get irritated that they're not, like, oh God, well, I can guess who this is on page 1, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me, is not having that pleasure that I used to have as a reader.
What has surprised you the most? You've been writing now for, we won't say how long, but a long time.
Long time.
About the publishing business.
Oh God, do you really want to start on that
yeah.
one? Oh no. Okay, give me a glass of wine and I'll really tell you the truth. No, I just think it's quite hard actually now, because of this, it's so limited, and things like there's not so much support anymore because there's so many people. So I don't know whether or not that's a conscious thing. So there's very much like the huge bestsellers that get a lot of the focus, and then there's the rest of us, and I find that quite disappointing. So I think that's the biggest change. There isn't that support, but I don't think COVID really helped either. I think that didn't do anyone any favors, and it hasn't really kind of jumped back from that. I don't think
It was kind of a double-edged sword because it brought more people to reading that didn't necessarily read because they were stuck at home or they couldn't get out. But you're right. I think publishing, the mid-list is gone. It used to be that you could be successful with 5,000 copies sold or whatever it was. Now you have to sell 500,000 or something.
I know. Yeah, that's why I'm getting my Rolex watch very soon, because I'm very grateful to have my job. But yes, it's true. I think it's very hard. But having said that, with overseas, like I've noticed that's quite different, say in France. I only know France because my books are over there. But the bookstores, there are loads and loads of bookstores in France, which I didn't expect. And they have I think it's a law where they can only sell for the same price across the board. So no one can be undercut. And so so the bookstores seem to have a lot more support. And that really surprised me about how many people are in bookstores in Paris, for sure. Yeah.
And in Britain, it used to be it could have changed, but don't you still have a library program that supports authors
library's
or
really
something?
good, actually. That's very lucrative, in fact, because you do get royalties on any book that's checked out, which I don't think you do here.
No, yeah.
And so you have to register and all that kind of thing. And, with the public library system, which unfortunately has recently been hacked. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. With cyber terror. But yes, the libraries are very, very much up and running with good programs and things.
With the changes in publishing, that also brings, some would say, opportunities. Writers have gone off in their own direction, taken a break from traditional publishing. Have you ever thought about doing that?
I did one as an experiment, and I actually really enjoyed writing it. It was a Vicky Hill. It was like it was like a novelette, I think you call it. It was like 150 pages or something. And I enjoyed the fact that I didn't have, the deadline was on me. And I still got it, edited. I paid someone to edit it. But only those people that knew my books would read it. It wasn't like, even though I tried to promote it, it's very hard, I think. I think self-publishing has its benefits, but to be heard above the noise of so many people out there doing it, it's very hard.
Yes, and you have to be very aggressive in your many things, Hannah, but you're not aggressive.
I haven't got it in me, actually. I know. I hide behind this veneer of non-aggression, but meanwhile, poison and stabbing.
You need a pit bull of a marketer or something like that to get your books out there.
Yeah, I know. I'm very quiet about it.
Can you tell us, I know the book just came out, Dagger of Death at Honeychurch Hall, but do you want to hint at what's coming next?
I've just started it.
Okay.
So actually, I'm really miserable today because I'm in that first draft. So I'm very happy to be going to the bar later with you guys. It's, hang on, I've got to think now. I had it on, because I was writing before I came out, actually. Well, first of all, and I'm sure people won't remember, actually, whether they really remember book to book. I don't know if they do. But I have got a new love interest for Cat. And he's so gorgeous. I'm very excited about him. And so I think I'm in the moment, I'm trying to figure out how to kill. Whether it's I thought maybe nicotine. So I've got this sort of kind of idea on that. But it does take place. I know this sounds a safari supper because I went on safari, which I know is boring, but I think you call them. What do you call them here? Where you go to each person's house for a course?
It's like a traveling dinner party.
Traveling dinner party. Yeah. So we call it a safari supper, and we actually have them in my village where I live, and it's definitely rife for like a bit of foul play on that. And also not practical because in the villages, you have to travel quite far to get to the next house. So you're going along in the dark, with holding your canapes or something. It's quite easy to get waylaid. So that's the backdrop. So when I said about I have to find my setting, that that's my beginning, is the safari. So like I knew that I wanted to write about Barbie, so that was, and then my mum. So it's those sorts of anchors that start me off.
They're kind of the seed. For your
Yes,
thought
exactly.
to
They're
sprout
the
from.
inspiration for the story that follows, but I never know quite where it goes. But I have to say, I am as I've got deeper into the series, I have to be so careful not to be repetitive, because I think that's a series issue, isn't it? Like going through the same old complaints or worries about a character. They have to evolve as well.
It's tough for an author because you have those dedicated fans that want those familiar touchstones.
Exactly. They want it to be the same.
Yes, but you can't bore the other readers who may not be aware of what you're doing. When you talk about being careful about not repeating things, does that extend to method of murder? Do you find yourself?
It does. I have a chart.
I poisoned 3 people. I can't poison somebody else in this book.
That's exactly it. It's true. And I know that, I think there was a grid somewhere, I'm sure you guys know it, that had the Agatha, all the things where she killed. Most of the time it was poison for her, though.
That's because she had that background working in a
pharmacy,
dispensary.
But also in a cozy, or maybe it's just my books. I always want the villain to have some human what's the word?
Characteristics.
Because I think it's not. I don't write about serial killers that are just mad, and they just go on these stabbing sprees and stuff. I want to understand why someone crosses to the dark side. That's what interests me, is why they did that.
That is a good point, because every villain is the hero of his or her own story. You're just looking at from their viewpoint.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm always interested in that. So I like to think my characters are quite well-rounded in that respect.
And quirky.
Always quirky. England for you. It's all the inbreeding in England. No, and the weather, which has a lot to do with it.
You've kind of covered that you're not the best of marketers for your own books.
No, I'm terrible, actually.
But are you on social media? Are there ways readers can find out about you and your books?
Well, oddly enough, we over here, Book Talk is our thing, and I'm with Paige and Jen and Kate Carlisle, and so that's very active on social media. Mostly on Facebook and on Instagram.
Okay.
And that's always something you can check on any of our Facebook pages. There are links to all these exciting things we do and giveaways and things like that. So that's been really, really, really good. Yeah. So I have that. So if someone went to my website, they would see I've got the whole book, how to find out about Book Talk on that, and then or Kate or Jen or Page.
And when you get together, what do you talk about? Books? Is that what it is?
Talk about books, promote other people's books, or maybe especially if they don't have that much traction, to try and bring awareness to new debut authors or authors that have just got a book out.
Wow.
It's really fun. We have lots of fun contests, and especially I think my favorite so far is the ugly sweater one for Christmas. Wasn't that fun? Yeah. Which I think was here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, they insist on bringing it back despite my best efforts
it
to
was
stamp
so
it
much
out.
fun. That was really fun. I enjoyed that. So lots of fun stuff. Next year.
Yes, you should come at Christmas. If you're around.
I would love to come at Christmas. Yeah.
Before we have to conclude, we'll see if we have any questions from your fans online or in person.
Oh, what, the story?
Yeah, the story of Honeychurch Hall and how it...
Yeah.
Oh, well, so originally, I got the idea because my mum was a widow, and I think she was like 75, and my dad had left her quite comfortably off, but not really rich or anything. And so she went and bought this wing of a country house without telling my sister or myself or anybody. Which was totally impractical at her age. It was down a mile drive, and it was on 4 floors and all that. And slowly she ran out of money, actually. So and now she's in a nursing home. But that was the sort of spark, because I wanted to write about a mother-daughter relationship. So a lot of it, even though it's set in a backdrop of a country house, which I know quite well, and the carriage house that she lives in belongs to a friend of mine, which is adorable. It's a lovely, lovely place. It really exists. But it's just more about reinventing. I always find there's this theme of reinvention in my books. So, my protagonist, Kat, has just come out of a relationship. So when she's like 39, so she's starting again in a new place. And Iris, who actually writes romance novels on the side secretly, as Crystal Storm. So she's a widow, but nobody knows, of course. Even her husband didn't know, and Kat, my protagonist, didn't know her mother did that. Is also reinventing herself. Yeah, so those are and then of course I have the antiques and things like that.
Actually, that's a very smart point, because Vicky kind of reinvents herself over the course of that.
Vicky
series.
does, and also my Island Sisters.
Mhm.
And I'm inventing myself.
You are.
My hero is Madonna. She's always inventing herself, isn't she? Madonna, she's always reinventing herself. Yeah, but it's exciting because it means that instead of looking back, you're always looking forward, new chapters and stuff like that.
That's smart. Any other questions?
Did you ever write another genre?
I am writing another genre.
Ooh, good question.
I was going to, I know I'm really nervous about it actually. So for about the last, I think 6 years, I've been struggling to finish this manuscript that I wrote in a state of, I think a fugue state, when you don't know your, I did NaNoWriMo, which I've only ever succeeded once, and this was this book.
Oh.
And it's like, I think they call it romantic fiction. It's not rom-com, and it's not.
I think now they used to call it women's fiction, but now it's relationship fiction.
Okay, it's relationship fiction.
Yeah.
Relationship fiction. But I enjoyed the different feeling. But again, I think it was because I was writing it for me and not to a deadline or anything. So it felt different. So, but my agent has seen half of the book, because I have written half of it, and he liked it. So that's a plus. Yeah. So, yeah. About my Vizslas. Is that about Draco and Athena? Yeah, I'll tell you. I'm very sad about that, actually. So I did have two Hungarian Vizslas, or Vizslas, as we call them over here, who I brought from Portland, Oregon to England, when I moved back to England. And they're siblings, they're 8.5. And then just before Christmas, I had to have Athena put to sleep because she had had cancer. So I was very sad. So I'm just adjusting to not having her around now. But well, there's a story to that. So my former husband has always wanted Vizslas, and now I've got them. I think I'd always have a Vizsla. They're very, very affectionate. We snuggle at night. We spoon in the bed under the set, which could be why I still live alone, actually. But and they're just very affectionate, but they are quite crazy. They need an awful lot of exercise. And they haven't got an undercoat, so they don't molt. They're that red russet color, if you know. Or I think they're in part of the Weimaraner family, or gun dogs, German pointers, that kind of look. They're a gun dog, yeah. I think Draco's really depressed, but I'm giving him my feelings over her because I do miss her. But he seems to be slowly getting used to it and having all my attention. So thank you for asking. Yeah, I know.
I'll add one last question before we wrap up. What was it like working as a secretary to a Formula One?
Oh,
I
got fired from that job, actually. Did I write that on my resume? Because I don't often talk about it. It's embarrassing.
You don't have to if you don't want to.
No, I do. No, he was, I think he's passed away now. He must have done, actually.
Stop encouraging her, Jen.
So I worked for John Surtees, who was a world champion motorbike kind of Formula One. Oh, wait, are you talking about when I was working on the aircraft? When I worked for Formula One? Okay, sorry. that was another story then.
You have many stories, but let's go with this one.
Oh, so this one I got fired because I was his secretary, and he called me his secretary because that's how it was pronounced in England, a secretary, S-E-K-K, secretary. And the thing is, I was absolutely dreadful because I couldn't type, or I couldn't. I just was. He said I was the worst secretary he'd ever had, and he let me go after 6 weeks. But sometimes he took me out for lunch, you know, and I just closed my eyes and held on because he drove so fast.
Wow.
It was like, but he was a good man. Yeah, that was not my finest hour anyway.
But you've gone on to glory since then. So
I may have to put him in a book, actually. I've forgotten all about that.
yeah,
It's good to be remembered.
NASCAR is hot in the U.S. So if you ever
What's that?
NASCAR, so if
Yes,
you ever do a
it
series,
is.
you could set in that
Oh.
world after you finish your other book.
I need to finish that because I need to finish that.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us virtually and those in person for another author event with Hannah Dennison. We're pleased to have what we like to call the Queen of the British Cozies here. And
You're
we will
so
have
sweet.
signed
Thank
copies
you.
of her new books available. Please give us a call or go online. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.